close enough together in the thumbnail.
Oh, so far we're not. Hello, good morning.
Hi.
Can you hear us okay, guys? You can write a comment on the right. You can write questions on the right as we go, and we'll get to them at the end. Yes, you can hear us. That is good. Thank you, Soledad. We're just going to give people a couple of seconds, couple of minutes to join us, and then we'll get started. Morning, Tobias. Phoebe and I were just discussing, well, a few things before we got started, but one thing is we've both just been reading a book called Lost Connections by Johann Hari. Have any of you guys read it? If you haven't, it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't read it, you need to read it. We were just saying that we have recommended it to pretty much like 10 to 15 people each. So everyone in our close circle of friends and family will be reading this book right now.
It is all of the, well, Johann outlines 7 reasons why people get anxious and depressed and how you can reconnect around you and the people around you and your work and your life to feel a whole lot better. And that's kind of nicely connected with today's topic. So check it out if you like a good book.
Yeah. And some really kind of uplifting stories of where people have reclaimed their lives through ways that you potentially wouldn't have thought. Which is
very
always
awesome
great.
Stories.
Yeah. I like the one about the cow. Do you remember one?
The cow, yes, incredible.
The cow is the great one.
A farmer who had just felt very depressed from his work, and because his work had basically disappeared.
Yeah.
And then the community around him buy him a cow, and he becomes a cattle farmer or a dairy farmer with one cow, and he's suddenly the happiest man in the world. Yeah. Amazing.
Instead of being given antidepressants, which is his other option. So natural antidepressants, changing your environment as opposed to staying in an environment that isn't benefiting you.
Exactly. Okay, I think I need
Hi, Gemma.
Ready to share screen. There we go. Missed the book title. Soledad, the book is called Lost Connections by Johann Hari. I've been reading it and Phoebe's been listening to it.
Yes.
So if you're lazy, you can do like her. If you like reading, you can do what I've done.
All right. I enjoy being able to walk along in nature, being very at one with my environment and having my brain stimulated.
I'm just kidding. Kidding. Okay, guys, we're going to slowly get started because we are on a tight clock and people can just jump in as we go. So thank you all for joining us. This is the first time we're doing live webinars, so I hope you enjoy it. Please let us know how you enjoy it and stay until the end because we've got some nice little prizes for you at the end. Oh, Lost Connections, there you go, the title of the book. Okay, let's get started with a quick, I'm sorry, this is the start. What to eat to focus and boost memory. Okay, let's get started, guys. So a very quick introduction. My name is Joe Welstead. I'm a former professional swimmer and co-founder and CEO of Motion Nutrition. We founded Motion Nutrition to provide supplements and nutritional solutions to give you a very strong foundation, both physically and mentally, so that you can tackle all of the challenges that are ahead of you and tackle them with strength and confidence. And I am here today with Phoebe Liebling. Phoebe is a Harley Street nutritionist, and she is also a consultant nutritionist for us at Motion Nutrition. In fact, she's even formulated our 2 latest vegan protein powders, Fresh Blueberry and Chocolate Spice. And if you haven't tried those, you definitely should because they are awesome. Thank you for being with us, Phoebe.
My pleasure.
And if you don't believe me yet, this is a nice little picture of me at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow representing Scotland in 2014. That was my last competition and it was really, really awesome. Okay, let's start with a little bit of an overview about what we're going to talk about. And I guess the idea here is to give you guys the tools to feed your brain properly, to optimize how you feel and how you perform mentally. And hopefully by the end of this show, you're going to have a really clear idea of some great foods that you can eat to promote a really healthy, powerful brain and improve your life and feel better as you go. And we really want you to participate, so please use the panel on the right to ask all of your questions. I think you can even thumb up some questions that are really interesting, and we'll definitely get to them at the end. We'll also be sharing a really, really great offer at the end of the show. And we've not done anything like this. This is the first time we're doing it, so you definitely want to stick around. We're in a very tight clock, so 30 minutes, that's it. You can get back to whatever it is you normally do on a Wednesday morning. Okay. So I think really the first thing that we should be asking ourselves, Phoebe, is why should we care about our brain health? A very, very simple question, but actually probably quite deep and meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, obviously our brains are hugely important. They control pretty much everything within our bodies. And just as an example, they take up 10% of your body mass, but they use 90% of your energy. So that's how much your brain is doing all of the time. And my big thing is that I think that I actually see quite a lot of walking wounded people. And this comes down to the fact that people maybe just kind of don't think about their nervous system function so much. Or they just kind of assume that a slightly lower functioning brain is kind of okay. It's just a consequence of our modern lifestyles. But I'm going to say that's actually not the case. And it'd be much better if we all jumped in a little bit and gave our brains and our nervous systems a bit more love, because we used to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that people take for granted, isn't it? When if they don't know how it is to feel great, you can kind of think that brain fog and anxiety and poor sleep are just normal things of everyday life. But you definitely can improve that and do a lot better. Yeah. And I think for me, the way that I look at improving in brain health is probably two different areas. One is how we feel and how we perform today.
Yeah.
And then the other is actually like our long-term brain health. So staying fit and young and healthy in the mind.
Yes.
As we age.
Because one of the big things, obviously, that we see, and I mean, we're not probably thinking about it right now, although I do put things in my day-to-day to kind of account for that in future. But neurodegeneration is a big thing. As our population gets older, we know that things like dementia and Alzheimer's, all those things are becoming more prevalent, because as we age, we lose this efficiency and our nerve systems can suffer. So yeah, absolutely. We want to be clear and focused and sleeping well and not anxious and not stressed in our short term, but at the same point in our long term, we want a brain that is doing all of those things when we're getting to our 70s, 80s, up towards our 90s.
And that's the other thing, isn't it? For a long time, I've thought that our brain cells would just die off and it was impossible to regenerate any, but actually all of the latest scientific research is saying that it is possible to regenerate brain cells. Yep. You have this neuroplasticity, which allows you to make new neural connections and learn new things and learn new movement patterns and new languages, even as you get really, really old. Yep. And part of improving that is obviously our diet. So let's get stuck into this.
Absolutely.
So a very, very kind of top-down view. I guess there's 5 really essential things that we should look at for feeding our brain. And the first is water. And this is, I don't think we need to spend too much time on this. It's probably quite obvious. We all know how it feels when we're dehydrated. We get foggy in the brain. We maybe have some mood swings and just want to, also we're thirsty and we don't really want to do anything. But it gets a little bit more interesting with fat. And we say that the brain is full of structural fat and that we need a lot of omega-3s. And I mean, you're big on this topic, so maybe take us through this a little bit.
Sure. So actually, when we look at omega-3s and we look at the brain and the nervous system, the nervous system is made up of fat, and so that'd be your kind of structural fats. When we break that down, omega-3s aren't actually just one thing. We have kind of 2 main different types that are the ones that we look at, and these are EPA and DHA. So DHA is what we call your kind of structural omega-3. So when you're really little, so when you're a baby and when you're actually a little bit older, we want you to be concentrating DHA in your diet. So that just helps to sort of sort out that structure, make it a little bit stronger. EPA is what we would term the functional part of omega-3. And this is the one that we see in like your oily fish and that kind of thing, which people always sing about, because that's the stuff that is getting everything working properly. It's making everything nice and fluid. It's giving those cells the ability to communicate effectively. So yeah, we want good quality fats and we want non-oxidized fats within our diet. So again, this is the idea of using your cold pressed oils and using small amounts of saturated fats if you are going to cook them, because when we look into the deep bits about chemical structures and that kind of thing, we want to make sure that we're not adding oxygen and adding those into our diets, because it speeds up the degradation, and that's what we don't want.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so we'll get into omega-3s in a little bit more detail in a moment. And a couple of the other essentials that we need for our brain protein, and we'll get into this a little bit in more detail later on, and how certain different types of protein can affect how we feel and our mood. And then glucose, a certain type of carbohydrate, which gives our brain a constant source of energy. And least but not last, vitamins and minerals, and this can be quite a convoluted area, so we'll look into this in a little bit more detail here. And we've outlined essentially 3 different areas here of how vitamins and minerals can benefit our brain. And I guess the 3 categories are vitamins that improve our energy levels, vitamins and minerals that improve our memory and learning ability, and vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that fight off aging. So can you give us maybe a couple of examples in each of these categories?
Sure. So when we actually talk about vitamin and minerals in the brain, what they're doing is they're not actually specifically enhancing brain function. They're basically providing the brain cells with more energy. So things like your B vitamins, they are fundamental to energy production in all of your cells. But like I said at the beginning, if your brain is using 90% of your energy, we need loads of those going into your brain tissue. So all of your B vitamins, but particularly things like B3, B5, B6, B9, and B12, so pretty much all of them, I may as well just said all of them, they're all going to be really, really important for making sure that you are feeling nice and energetic. When we talk about things like learning and memory, again, what we're going to do is we're going to enhance the production of things called neurotransmitters, which are basically like hormones within the brain that allow it to do all of the things we want it to do. This is why I go for vibrantly colourful diets, because you pretty much need all of them, but top ones would be things, again, like zinc and magnesium, all of your fat-soluble vitamins, so your vitamin A, E, and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much, you want all of them in there. When we're talking about things like keeping the brain quick and sort of prolonging its, I can't think of the word I'm trying to say. Anyway, what we want...
Prolong its youth and lifespan.
Exactly. Maybe I need a bit more. Things like vitamin D are really, really important. Yeah. So what we were saying with sort of neurodegeneration in future, in the short term, vitamin D helps you sort of like learn, and it's really good for the brain. But actually, if we start using it as a therapeutic tool when we're a bit older, it can actually be helpful in Alzheimer's. You'll see that the thing that causes Alzheimer's, which is these plaques in the brain, if you use lots of vitamin D, it can actually help to get rid of them. So when we talk about these kind of nutrients, if we're preloading our body with all of them, and we know that nobody gets enough vitamin D unless you literally live at the equator and spend all of your time in a swimsuit, yeah, vitamin D is really, really helpful.
In which case, lucky you.
Yeah, amazing. Take us with you. And antioxidants, again, with aging, it's a loss of efficiency. You get more oxidation of the cells, so vibrantly colourful things, all your berries, your dark purpley beetroot, aubergines, beetroot, squash, butternut, all those kind of things. Anything colourful, the colourful pigments are your antioxidants. Yeah. So eat more of them, get loads of greens in your diet. It's going to be the best thing you can do.
And with the vitamin D, you told me a crazy statistic the other day, which was something like in the elderly population, about 85% of the population is actually deficient in vitamin D.
Yeah.
And if you just heard what Phoebe said, high levels of vitamin D can reverse things like degenerative disease or
neurodegeneration.
Yeah, exactly. And you need a lot, and people are actually getting not enough. So you really want to bump that up.
Exactly. So this is the point. Most people need to supplement, because the way that you get vitamin D is you need to be exposed to intense sunshine for at least 15 to 20 minutes with no sun protection on skin that wouldn't usually be exposed to sunshine.
Basically impossible. So when I was training for swimming in Scotland, we routinely got blood tests done for vitamin D levels, and every single person that was not yet on supplements was deficient. I mean, this is you don't even need to do the test if you're not taking any. It's crazy.
No,
absolutely. But okay, so before we talk about supplementation, really food comes first with all these things. But then there are some areas such as adaptogenic herbs that would not necessarily be part of everyday food. So what are adaptogens?
Okay, so as the name would imply, these are amazing sort of herbal things that give your body the ability to adapt to its surroundings. And the way that I kind of explain this to people is that you are only as well as you are able to be flexible to the environmental pressures that you're faced with. So the brilliant thing about these ones that we popped in front of you is they're what we would call nerve tonics. They go into the nerve system, and whereas say we would give you more B vitamins and it would just upregulate your energy production, you would feel generally more energetic. What these will do is they go in and they do what they do where they're needed to. So if you're feeling a little bit overstressed, something like ashwagandha and rhodiola will give you a bit of balance, a bit of calm clarity. They don't sort of turn you off. They just make you more able to deal with those stresses that you encounter every day. Similarly, things like gotukola and brahmi. Panax ginseng, on the other hand, is what we would call a more energetic herb. So for somebody, again, if we're trying to give them a little bit of fatigue help, it'll go in. It won't make them super bouncy, which wouldn't be helpful, because a lot of people won't just feel a little bit tired. They might feel anxious as well. And if you give them loads of really energetic things that just have that ability, it might make the anxiety worse whilst dealing with the fatigue. So we like adaptogens because they'll go in, they'll do things gently, and they're cumulative. So they sort of work over the long period and give you that plasticity over time. And similarly, things like ginkgo, it's very protective of things like the cardiovascular system, in addition to being a really potent kind of antioxidant style herb for the nervous system. So all of these are just generally lovely to be added in on top of your diet, because I mean, I know I'm not going to go out and eat significant quantities of ginkgo.
Of course.
So I add them in on top of my lovely diet.
Yeah, and originally a lot of these come from Chinese medicine or Ayurveda. I know that in Chinese medicine, Panax ginseng is considered the fountain of youth, which tells you a lot, and I think that is pretty cool. Okay, so let's look at real food and things that you get in everyday meals, and give you guys as many tips as possible on things that can really, really help your brain performance from your regular food. So we're going to take you through 12 foods, 12 different foods that can help with providing your brain with everything it needs for peak mental performance. And one thing that we'll never do at Motion Nutrition is tell you guys to diet. We are all about optimization of our food and optimization of our health. So what that means is eating more of the really, really good stuff and just not worrying about the bad stuff. We're never going to tell you to restrict anything or to stop eating a whole food category. It's all about providing your body and mind with all the essential nutrients that it needs for being really, really in a great position and thriving. So in a first area, if we're looking at protein-rich brain foods, and I know we have some vegans in there listening, so we'll get to that as well. But as a first example, I know that you're a big, big fan of eggs. And so why is that?
Okay, so yes, I do love an egg. The great thing about eggs is I kind of refer to them as nature's little perfect parcel. Pretty much they contain everything apart from vitamin C. So you're going to get good quality protein, you're going to get good quality fats, you're going to get vitamins and minerals in there. When we specifically talk about the nervous system, we are going to highlight something called choline. It's actually part of the B vitamin group family. And what it goes on to do is produce the neurotransmitter, one of those brain sort of hormones that I spoke about before, called acetylcholine. And that is one of the main driving forces behind optimal memory and focus. If you don't have enough choline or acetylcholine in your diet, you will have brain fog, you will have short-term and long-term memory losses, you will feel tired, all those kind of things. So absolutely, I am an absolute champion for eggs. And I know that a lot of people get worried about the old cholesterol question, but let's draw a line under that. Please do not worry. Go for good quality organic eggs every time, and do not be concerned. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to eat 3 a day forever, but at the same point, good quality eggs in your diet. Don't be concerned about that.
Yeah. Okay, and another thing that I know you love is organic whey protein. And when we talked about earlier on in the introduction, different protein sources and different amino acids that can affect our mood, there's one key thing about organic whey protein.
Yes, and this is one of the things when I get a little bit nerdy about food, and I mean you'll come to understand this. So when we look at protein-rich foods, we will get, especially when we look at animal protein-rich foods, I'll differentiate with the plant-based in a second, we get all of our amino acids in there, and they are our building blocks to make all proteins. When we look at whey and we look at certain other foods, we're actually looking at a specific one called tryptophan. And tryptophan, with the addition of other vitamins and minerals, goes on to become serotonin, which people will have heard of as the kind of good mood hormone. And then that, through another conversion, becomes melatonin, which people will also have heard of because that's what makes you feel sleepy in the evening. All the amino acids in another kind of rich protein food will compete for little transporters into the brain. When we look at whey, it's really rich in something called lactalbumin. I'm getting a bit scientific here now. But when you have that, it outcompetes all the other amino acids, because what we struggle with sometimes is actually getting that tryptophan into the brain to be converted to serotonin and melatonin. So people might be eating plenty of tryptophan-rich foods, but you can convert that serotonin in the gut, and then it doesn't quite get to the brain. So organic whey protein bypasses all of that. You get your beautiful serotonin into the brain, that becomes melatonin, you feel super happy, you sleep fantastically, and Phoebe goes on with her nerdy thing about whey.
Okay, great. Now, if we're looking at the second category here that we've highlighted, essentially high fiber foods. And oats is a great one. Also, if you're looking for tryptophan, I know that oats is a great source of tryptophan, and that is why Phoebe includes it in our chocolate spice evening protein blend to make you feel nice and sleepy in the evening. By the way, I had it last night, blended with some hazelnut milk and a banana. It's amazing. Like,
it's so good.
It's incredible.
I drink it with hot cashew milk and have it like hot chocolate.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, you gotta try it.
Yeah. So yes, anything to do with generally feeling well, and specifically the nervous system, your digestion has got to be good. So having lots of fiber in your diet will make sure that you're getting rid of things like toxins, you're going to the bathroom regularly, all of that kind of stuff is really, really important. Just to touch on, I know that we've got some vegans here. So in terms of vegan sources of tryptophan, yes, oats are great. Things like chickpeas are good as well. Your lentils, your beans, your pulses, and also things like whole grains. So for example, if you want to make sure you're getting lots of tryptophan in your diet in the evening, something like a beautiful chickpea curry with some brown rice and some leafy greens, you're going to hit all the markers. So don't worry that if you're not eating animal proteins that you won't get those amino acids. You will. You just need to combine them a little bit more effectively, or be more observant about doing that. And also, obviously, leafy greens. If we scan back to regulating digestion, leafy greens, fantastic in terms of their fiber. If you imagine that you're basically eating like a sweeping brush, that's going to make sure that you're getting things through your digestion. But also when we scan back to all of those vibrant colors, you're going to get your antioxidants. Leafy greens are also a really, really good source of your water-soluble vitamins, which is why it's good to actually try and have some of them raw as well, because water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C and some of the B vitamins don't like heat so much. So whereas your minerals, you're going to get zinc and magnesium and everything from your leafy greens as well. They'll be fine if you cook them a little bit, but try and mix them up. So have a little bit of salad alongside sweating down some kale in your chickpea curry that you're eating.
Yeah. And I know that you love doing a really great big green smoothie in the morning. So give us a couple of your favorite leafy greens that you chuck in your morning smoothie.
I have to pick my favorites. Okay, so I really like things like dark Cavolo Nero, because the darker they are, the richer they are in antioxidants, and I think the flavor is just really more intense. I also love things like bittery things, so rocket and watercress. They're going to stimulate liver digestion, and they taste great in salads. And at this time of year, my big favorite is parsley, because it's super high in vitamin C, but it's also a really handy natural antihistamine. It blocks the release of histamine from the cells. Awesome. So if you get seasonal allergies,
great for springtime.
Make pesto.
Yeah. Okay, moving on now to fatty foods and things that give you great sources of omega-3s.
Yes.
For example, a nice vegan supply of omega-3 source is hemp seed oil. Yes. Is this one of your favorites, or what do you tend to use?
Yeah, so I really like hemp seed oil, and again, I like things that will do a lot for me with very little effort. So yeah, hemp seed oil is fantastic. It's really rich in omega-3. It's a little bit more stable as well than flaxseed oil. Right. So in terms of storing it, you don't need to be quite as overly observant, because people get very worried about the oxidation of flaxseed oil. We're going to draw a line under that. Just to clarify though, when you look at omega-3 from plant-based sources as opposed to things like oily fish, they're a step back in the conversion train. So the amount that you have to eat will be significantly more than if you're eating an animal source of omega-3. Doesn't mean that you won't get omega-3 from it, but you just need to be, again, a little bit more aware, because what we're looking at, especially with the brain, is the balance between your omega-3 and your omega-6 influx. And what I see a lot with people is that their omega-6 influx is way up.
And we don't tend to realize this.
No. And we get omega-6 from a lot of things in our diet, and we would ideally like a ratio of sort of 1-to-1, 3-to-6. The average person is 1-to-20. Right. So, I mean, they're omega-6. 20
times more omega-6 compared to omega-3.
Exactly, which is huge. So what we really want to do is, like we say, we're not going to chuck loads of things out of your diet, although processed foods can go. We just want to make sure that we're really pushing that influx of omega-3. So use your hemp seed oil, add it to smoothies, actually sprinkle on hemp seeds. Chia is also a really good quality source of vegan omega-3. You can take a supplement. So sometimes they come from algal sources, sometimes they come from seeds. What you're always going to get, though, is you're going to get high levels of DHA, just because that's the way that it happens in the plants. So again, I try and do both. I usually say for a vegan to have a supplement, but then also to be really conscious that you're adding in your hemp seed oil and blah, blah, blah within your diet. Yeah. When we talk about people who do eat animal protein, oily fish, top quality source, you're going to get all of your omega-3 from there, and it will be higher in EPA, that functional fat. My little acronym.
You've got a nice little acronym.
I do. It's SMASH, because it didn't quite fit. So SMASHT. So you want your small ones: sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, herring, and trout.
Well done.
Yes, I know. Because oily fish are fantastic, but then we want to go at the bottom of the food chain because toxins get stored in oils and stuff. So you go right at the bottom, get your omega-3, leave the toxins to the top predatory fish.
These also tend to be the more sustainable kind of fish, especially like, I think mackerel is the most sustainable because they reproduce so fast.
Exactly.
Which is awesome.
And also, just as a quick one there, if you are supplementing, go for something like I use Bear Biology in my clinic. Make sure that you're getting a supplement that comes from a sustainable source of small fish. And another little tidbit for you, if you go for grass-fed organic meat as opposed to conventionally reared meat, the omega-3 profile will be much more like a salmon when compared to something else, which would be really, really high in omega-6. So another little
good tips.
And also it's better for the animal.
I've also just started using something called omega-3 zone, which is a liquid omega-3 oil and super, super high dose of EPA.
Fantastic.
And you just need one spoonful in the morning and bang, you're done.
It's like rocket fuel for the brain.
It is,
literally.
It is. And it makes everything else work a lot better. Yes. Okay, moving on to flavonoids. And this is the kind of antioxidants that you're getting in some of these colorful fruits and vegetables that you're talking about. But one area that we don't necessarily think about is the skin of ideally untreated organic apples. And a lot of people actually will peel their apples. So what are they missing out on if they do this?
So actually it's true of a lot of different things. So things like ginger and turmeric and all of that as well. All of these things concentrate right under the skin. So if you are removing the skin of your apple, not only are you going to remove the skin, you're going to remove that top layer of the actual fruit flesh. And that will mean that you do lose some of those really, really important antioxidants. So like we say, obviously, if you can go for the organic, if you can go for the seasonal as well, because when things ripen in their natural state, then they develop all of these compounds naturally and in higher quantities. So yeah, try not to peel your fruit if you can get the good quality ones.
And that's basically because the flavonoids and antioxidants tend to be the defense mechanisms of the plants, right? But for us, they're really, really beneficial. So that's why they're right on the outside of the fruit or vegetables. And that's why you want to eat the whole thing. And with blueberries, a cool thing is that I know that if you have enough of it, it actually increases blood flow to the brain, which is amazing. It means that everything else that you're eating is actually going to access your brain a lot better, which is pretty cool. You do need to eat quite a lot of it though, and regularly.
But they taste really good.
Exactly. Okay, so another area that we don't necessarily consider for our brain health is our gut. And so can you explain a little bit the connection between our gut health and our nervous system and why that's so important for our brain?
Yeah, sure. So we have a couple things to kind of touch on here. So we have something called the blood-brain barrier, which is basically what protects our brain from the rest of our body because it's very delicate and that kind of thing. But the structure of that is very similar to our gut lining. So if we have what we would term intestinal permeability, this kind of slight leakiness of the gut, or we've got inflammation in the gut, that can be mirrored in the brain, and that's when we can get some issues kind of going on, because if your blood-brain barrier isn't keeping its gates nice and sort of firmly shut, then you might get things entering the brain that you don't want to be there. So that's something to really watch out for. And that's when we talk about things like bone broth and collagen and good quality protein sources, because if you can imagine that gelatinous nature, that kind of soothing, the glutamine, all of those elastic connective tissues, they're what those bits of our body are made out of. We are basically taking what was that in the animal and then doing it again in our body. Similarly, probiotics, we use them for harnessing our stuff from our food. They make nutrients for us. But when we look at the gut, you have a kind of layers of lining. You've got the actual enterocytes, the lining of the cells, and you've got a mucus layer, and that's full of probiotics. They communicate directly with our nervous system. And we actually kind of say that the gut is the second brain. Having optimal levels of probiotic bacteria in your gut is basically going to support your immune health. It's going to make your brain function better. So fermented foods, having things like kefir, a little bit of kombucha, fresh miso paste, really good idea to have those in.
And I love making my own bone broth.
Oh my
like
goodness.
Slow cooker, put it in there, leave it for 24 hours, come back and it's ready to go. It's just like magic and it tastes really, really delicious. And not to gloat, but Phoebe and I were just saying that we haven't, touch wood, we haven't actually been ill for a very, very long time. And I think that a strong gut and strong gut health has got a lot to do with that.
Exactly.
Okay, so with all these things, is food enough? And how can supplements help? And in fact, I really like hearing you talk about Power Up and Unplug and nootropic supplements. So can you kind of take us through how they work, how they add a little bit more to our diet, and maybe how they've helped some of your clients in clinic?
So I think I will always say that I am a food first person, because I think when somebody walks into my clinic that they usually have a lot of things going on, and we can always start with dealing with either their functional issues or dealing with their food. But on top of that, we are sort of bombarded with things in our modern day way of living. So we don't take adequate time to rest. We don't take adequate time off if we aren't feeling well, that kind of thing. And I think that's where really good therapeutic targeted supplementation, not just chucking random things down your throat in the morning, is really, really beneficial. So if we talk quickly through what the nootropics are, they're basically kind of multifaceted supplements that give you not only those sort of nutrients that we know are going to support your brain, like your B vitamins, your vitamin D and that kind of thing, but then they go layers on top of that. They add those adaptogens that give you that increased plasticity. So now, we're looking at not just short term, we're looking at long term. And then they also give some amino acids as well. So when we see that obviously people are eating good quality protein, that's great, but is their digestion optimal enough to make sure they're harnessing all their amino acids? And do they have enough to account for the fact that they are really stressed and they work X amount of hours a day and then they go to the gym and that kind of thing? So just topping up with these little bits means that we can kind of preempt any issues. And that's what I would prefer. Like we say, we don't get ill. But that's because we don't.
No, you're just bragging.
I know, sorry. Because we kind of dive in there before anything bad happens, which is always a really, really good idea. So I would prefer to be there before I get symptomatic and just not think about it. So if we look at the two different things, they are standalone products, but they work very nicely together. In both of them, you've got the sort of the nutrients that we've targeted that your body needs, and then you've added on top, say, for example, ashwagandha and rhodiola in one. You've got the goticola and the brahmi and that kind of thing. And then we've targeted things like this acetylcholine and those kind of bits that you know that the body just really wants to kind of suck up. As an example, I have a lot of sort of young professional people. They work in the city. We live in London, all that kind of thing. They come in and they're also exercising, and it's more that they don't have that focus. They have a little bit of brain fog. They're maybe not sleeping so well. They know they're a bit stressed, but I'm not going to tell them to give up their job. I can't do that. So in the short term, I look at it as a therapeutic supplement, and I would probably give them both. I separate them from meals because, remember, amino acids, they're similar to protein. If you have them away from your meals, you optimize on absorbing those rather than them being digested with your food. And if you just look over time, you get those people coming back and they're saying, oh, I just feel a bit more rested when I wake up in the morning, and I don't need to have a second coffee. And I went to the gym after work, and I feel much better. And this is the idea. I'm not giving them something that is going to just soup them up one way and then turn them off the other way. You're making their body work better, which is,
and that's the feedback that's been amazing for us as well. You know, it tends to be very, very quick feedback. People will even try the 3-day trial packs and give us this amazing feedback that, you know, they've slept well for the first time in years. They wake up feeling alive for the first time in years. They have more focus, but also they're less likely to get distracted. And I know that distractions came up a lot when we asked people about what was stopping them from being efficient at work. And so that's where the unplug in the evening and the power up during the day can really, really help. And as a thank you for joining us today, you can get a free sample of both. You just need to head to the link, which we'll share now, and you can use the promo code FREESAMPLER. You just need to pay a very small nominal fee for the shipping, and you're getting the products for free. And that is really, really awesome because you get to try it for yourself. And don't forget, you get those first wave benefits, but then also over time, you get those second wave benefits of the adaptogens that we're talking about. So if you're getting those those first few benefits, and you think this can really help you with your mental performance during the day and your sleep at night, then it's really worth giving a full month to go and getting that second wave benefits.
Because like we've said, I give them to people as therapeutic supplements to start off with. But what I'll find is that people, it's not that they become reliant on them, but they might notice that if they take out the unplug after about like 2 or 3 weeks, it's not that they stop sleeping, but they just lose that little bit of vitality in the morning. And so they just choose to keep them back in because they like that feeling of being optimal as opposed to functional. And that's what we're both about. We don't want to be sort of wandering along. We want to be bouncing.
Exactly. Okay, we'll just turn to a couple of your questions before heading off. Let's see, Mushumi asks, how long should one take a vitamin D supplement? Now, vitamin D, you're actually getting a very, very high dose of vitamin D in Power Up. So if you're taking Power Up, there's not really any need for taking another vitamin D. But do you have an opinion on whether somebody should be always on vitamin D or only in the winter, or what's the deal?
So I would say that I personally take vitamin D all year round. I just tailor my dosage at different times of year. If I know that I'm going to be out and about walking a lot in the summer, I might just take my Power Up and know that that's fine. There are a couple of indications that you might need more vitamin D, because vitamin D is also really integral for immune function. It's also integral for bone density, and all those kind of things. So what I would say is a standard maintenance would be between 1,000 and 3,000 international units a day. If you have any
Power Up is 2,000 if I remember right.
Yeah, so you should kind of be all right with that. If you have any other warning signs, like you pick up coughs and colds really easily, or if you have any kind of gut issues, then what you might need is just to up your vitamin D. And also by taking a vitamin D supplement alongside something that contains fat, because vitamin D is fat soluble, you can actually take up more of it.
Yeah, so ideally you probably want some omega-3 with the vitamin D and with Power Up, because the same thing happens with B vitamins. B vitamin supplementation, so all those great things there in Power Up, is way more efficient and way more effective if you're taking it alongside, or if you have alongside in your diet, really good sources of omega-3 and enough omega-3. Okay, let's see. Gemma said we answered her question, I believe.
Okay.
Answer to my omega question. She's got another one. I take a multivitamin and also started taking a B12 only vitamin. As in a recent blood test, I was just under the healthy level.
Okay.
But have also heard that you can take too much. Should I stick with a B12 only or carry on with the multivitamin? So there's also a high level of B12 in Power Up. So can you take too much B12?
So if you are eating no animal foods whatsoever, you will not be getting any through your diet, so you will probably need to take some. I just want to touch on the nutritional yeast thing there. Nutritional yeast is a B12 analog. You will not gain active B12 from nutritional yeast. Similarly with algae, they are sort of promoted as being sources of B12. What they are is, if you think about a lock and a key, they're a similar shaped key that won't open the door. So you actually need to be careful. Yeah, you don't want to take too many of those analogs, because they can interrupt your absorption of active B12. What I would say is, yes, B12 you can store. If you're a vegan and you go to your GP, they will test you once every 6 months and just check that your levels are optimal. You also want to make sure that you're getting adequate iron and vitamin B9, because they work in a little trio. If you have any more really specific questions, I'm sure that you can send them through. And
of course, you can email us or send us an Instagram message at Motion Nutrition. Happy to answer any question. Okay, we have time for one last question, which is, I have recently switched to almond milk instead of dairy. Is it in any way more beneficial when it comes to the brain?
There is a great range when we're talking almond milk. If we look at a lot of the almond milks, what I would call an almond milk is almonds plus water, potentially with sea salt. I mean, that's an almond milk. A lot of
the Plenish is a really great one.
Exactly. Root Health do an ultimate almond.
Root Health ultimate, but not the regular, because it only has a tiny bit.
Exactly. I don't want to be looking at the back of a packet and see water, sugar, sunflower oil, and then almonds right down at the bottom. When we talk about whether it's more beneficial or less beneficial to the brain, if you have an intolerance to dairy or an issue with lactose, then it would be beneficial to make a switch, because you're going to be causing gut inflammation by having things that don't work for you, and that can have a knock-on effect on the nervous system. But if you tolerate really good organic dairy, that's actually going to be a richer source of your amino acids. So that potentially would be better for the brain. But like I say, if you're going to have a really good quality almond milk and you're getting lots of other things within your diet, then I see no problem about making the swap. Just make sure it's one of those good ones. Yeah,
of course. Okay, we are really tight for time now, so we're going to have to leave. But as a thank you for staying here, we got another little reminder that you can get a whole bunch of free prizes for referring your friends to us, and it's super, super easy. All you have to do is head to motionnutrition.com/refer-a-pal, and all people have to do is sign up with their email, and then as you get more and more friends signing up, you will receive incentives, and you will even receive up to 3 months of free organic protein powders in our new beautiful protein packaging, and with our new beautiful fresh blueberry and chocolate spice protein powders. And if you found this interesting, you can also you'll be able to send this webinar to all of your friends that you would like to share this with, just like we shared our favorite book with you when we started. So thank you very much for joining, and have a great day, and we'll speak to you soon.
And Mashumi's already said thank you.
Thank you, Mashumi. Thank you for joining.
Yes, we're
glad
you
enjoyed it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.